So welcome, I'm Jane Turner from writewithjane.com, and today I'm talking to Leanne, the Barefoot Medium, who has written a wonderful series of books in psychic development and a book on mediumship. So Leanne, you've been nothing if not busy writing books.
I have indeed. It's certainly been a process of learning and growing, and then sharing some of those tools and tips and techniques that I've learned along the way.
Tell me a little bit about, especially the psychic development series. Tell me a little bit about what people will find in those books.
I guess I'll start with how they came about.
I'd love that.
Initially, so the first book in the series is called Basics of Working with Spirit. And that came about because of when I stepped into my journey, I found a lot of people saying to me, you need to ground your energy, you need to cleanse and clear and learn how to protect yourself. And a lot of people were saying, visualize this and see this. And I don't work that way. So my strongest sense is not really the visual, it's more about the feel. And so I had to spend a lot of time working out what worked for me rather than what other people were using to ground their energy, to cleanse and to clear and to protect. So the Basics of Spirit book is really a tool to help people to be able to easily understand what grounding means in the first instance, and then offers a variety of different tools and techniques to help you to be able to do that. So it's very practical in nature, and it came about because I couldn't find a resource that helped me. So I wrote this book to be able to help others to have a one-stop shop to find out how to do that for themselves.
A lot of people are making the assumption that people know what grounding means and that they would know how to do it. And another really interesting thing that you pointed out there also is that the advice that you were given was more or less generic advice. It didn't take into account your needs and your preferences and your special talents. So I think, yes, this has really opened up a little bit of a can of worms in a way.
It has, yeah. And so, I think that we are all individual beings and we all learn and grow and experience life differently. So why would our psychic or spiritual development be any different? And the way that energy works for us, or that our connection with our abilities or with the spirit world, why would that be any different than being unique to who we are? And so I think that's a really important thing for people to remember, that just because it works this way for one person doesn't mean that that's how it's going to work for you.
Yeah, that is really important. And then the second book came onto the horizon. What was that one about?
So the second one was really the tarot book that I wrote that talked people through how they could start reading the tarot intuitively. I got my first deck of tarot cards when I was 13. So I would always play around with them and just ask questions. And what I discovered was that spirit was really teaching me and guiding me in how to work with the cards. And there's two ways that you can read tarot cards. You can use someone else's book meaning and look up a book and read it that way, or you can connect to your intuition, your inner knowing, your wisdom, and bring through what the card means for you. And so what that second book was about was teaching people how to read the tarot intuitively without needing to look up a book.
And that's another interesting thing as well, because while I haven't had a lot to do with tarot, I remember being very passive in the process when someone was reading my cards, because do you know why? And this is the old, the mindset, isn't it? So interesting. Look, I must admit, I've been left-brained thinker, really, that's what I built a career around. And moving into business after I was made redundant has changed me to an extent, but there's still that kind of left brain dominance. And of course, I had been brought up in a family that thought that's, gypsies, that's not what we do kind of thing. And I had, I guess, a little bit of embedded and unconscious suspicion about not wanting to give too much away. Now, I ripped myself off in terms of that process, essentially, didn't I? But, we learn and we grow the whole way.
We do. And, I think it's really interesting that a lot of people do have a perception of the tarot being, what they used to call it was the devil's picture book. So centuries ago, when the tarot was first developed, it was a card game that was used in Italy. And so the tarot decks that we have today are still based off that original tarot game that was developed centuries ago. And all the tarot is a card with some imagery, some symbols, some color within it. And any of us have the ability to be able to read those cards intuitively. It's like, looking at your screen, I can see the red color in the screen there. That's exactly what the tarot does. You're guided to look at something. And then I ask myself, what does red mean for me? And
Yes.
so red means for me, it can mean a number of things. It can mean grounding. It can mean passion. It can mean anger. And so in all different scenarios, when you start piecing the story together in that card, it just tells you a story about what's happening in someone's life in that moment, and or what the possibilities are for tomorrow.
Yes, I love that. And then we've got the third book, the divination tools and techniques.
Yeah, so that one brought more of the tools together around how we read psychically. So, there's psychics and there's mediums, and we'll talk no doubt about the mediumship in a minute. When we're reading psychically for another person, what we're doing is tapping into their energy, and we're essentially reading their energy like a tarot card, and getting impressions and information and symbols and colors even from that energy field to be able to tell a story about what's happening in that person's world in the moment and what the possibilities are for tomorrow. And so tarot is one tool that we can use to divine for information about what's going on in a person's life and what the possibilities are. We can tap into the aura, the energy field, and read that information. We can use pendulums, automatic writing. And so that book takes people through all of those different tools and what they mean, how they work, and some step-by-step guidance on how they can do readings using those techniques or those tools.
Fantastic. And I understand that you work with people on so many different levels. And one of them that was of great interest to me was around the business space,
Yes.
to help people really clear out any clutter in their thinking, in their beliefs, I guess, as much as anything too.
So what I do is I combine my spiritual abilities or gifts or connection with my background in education and management and business. I've been running my own business for, well over 12 years, 13 years now. And all of those things that I learn along the way, including the things that limit myself and block myself and all those struggles and challenges that we can have along the way in business. And so I bring those two things together. And what my spiritual abilities allow me to do is tap in at a little bit of a different level and be able to see what I call energy loops or patterns or beliefs that are sitting underneath things that might be limiting or holding someone back from reaching their potential. And to then work through those things and help people clear them and heal them and get the insight they need to transform so that they can then excel and thrive in their businesses. And it's something I really love doing, because you get to see people achieving what they want to achieve in their life and following their passion.
Yes, exactly. And you're walking the talk in a sense as well, aren't you? That you've had your own journey through dealing with the various ups and downs in business, and that transition from a more, what's the word I even want to use here? Traditional, perfect wording. Thank you. Yes, the more traditional background. What was involved in that transition for you?
I guess I had been involved in teaching and educating for quite some time. Like I said, I was in education and senior management. I managed groups of teaching staff and students, and I taught in the classroom. So when I first stepped away from that role and into my business full time, I would run little mini meditation circles or classes for 6 weeks, and that helped me to start building up my business in a way that I was comfortable with as well. There was certainly a lot of learning along the way around skills that I didn't have. And I had to grow and stretch. And I often talk to clients about, where is it that you need to stretch? Because we all get those invitations to go, okay, well, I don't have this skill, I don't have this ability. Is it something I can stretch and grow into? And what do I need in order to get there?
Yeah.
So accounting and invoicing and that side of things was totally not my bag.
It's so true though, that growing with your business is a big deal, and anybody who's sort of too wedded to the comfort zone is possibly not going to be able to make it in business. And I find it challenging myself. I think as humans, we kind of like to feel like we know what we're doing and we're not out of our comfort zone.
Exactly. And yet, the growth comes from discomfort and being uncomfortable, because if we were comfortable all the time, we wouldn't grow. I was incredibly lucky with my role at the university I worked at, that I would be offered a number of different projects and things to work on that allowed me to develop the skills that I needed to step into business. They would often get me to test the learning management system. So I learned a lot of the technology and IT stuff. And so from a website development perspective and the technology side and e-learning tools, I knew all of that before I stepped into my business full time. Yeah. So I was lucky to have that.
Well, look, if you were to give 3 tips to somebody who's looking to start a business or grow their business, or they're feeling just uncertain, what would they be?
First one I would say is to sit down and look at the stories, the thoughts that you might be telling yourself about what you can and can't do. And I would focus in on what the can't is, or the what you feel you're lacking, and to really look at those stories that you're telling yourself and then ask yourself if you want to keep making them true.
What a great approach to take.
Because we get to choose the stories we tell ourselves. And if we tell ourselves that we're not good at something or we can't do something, then yes, we're going to make that true.
That's right. Yes.
And so if that's what you want to keep making true, or I'm not good at managing money, and that was a story I had that played out. I was always told I was terrible with money. And so stepping into business in particular, you have to be good with money in terms of, that's the way that your clients are going to exchange your time, energy, or service with you.
Exactly. Not to mention the shiny object syndrome that hits a lot of people. And I've bought some ridiculous programs that were meant to get me to 6 figures in 2 weeks and crazy things like that. Like, where was the left brain then?
There are a lot of those things out there. And the
Yeah.
reality is that if you're looking for that shiny little object quick fix, it's not going to give you the development, the skills, the abilities that you need long term to be successful in business. And so, start with, what are my beliefs that sit here? What are my stories? And then the next thing I would say is develop your business skills.
So we're going to look at our story. That's the first point. We're going to develop the business savvy. Yep.
Yeah.
And what's your third one for us?
And the third one is I'd find balance between the personal life and work.
Yeah, that's gold. Now, in terms of you being already an author, would you have some tips for my potential authors, the people who are thinking to write a book, probably inspired from what they've heard from you now? What would you say to them? 3 tips for them, how to go about it.
Oh, okay. Well, I would use the same tip around check your story that's going on.
Yeah,
I would always start with that one, because often when it comes to writing, we hold ourselves back saying we're not good at it. So I've got a bit of dyslexia. My spelling is terrible. And so if anyone had told me years ago that I would have written 4 books with more on the way, it wouldn't have been something in my mindset. And so I think that's the first part. The second thing I would suggest is, rather than procrastinating, give yourself half an hour, an hour every morning to just write something.
Yeah, it's great advice.
And it could just be, I have no idea what to write. I feel like I'm blocked. Start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you'll find is, as you keep working through and writing that, it'll start coming out. And just trust your ideas. Trust yourself. If you've been given an idea, a vision, a thought, for something that needs to be put on paper, trust that if it helps one person, to put it out there.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes. Well, now, where can people find you, Leanne?
They can find information about everything that I do and my books on my website, thebarefootmedium.com.au, or on all the social media places, Facebook, Instagram, all of those things, The Barefoot Medium.